Right, finally got around to buying a QuickJack. It's been years since I first decided I wanted one, and only just been able to justify it because they are bloody expensive. It's raining right now and I want to get it set up. It's the weekend, ready to do the brakes on the Mini with it next week and maybe align the rear axle again on the VXR. It drives slightly wonky after I did the rear axle bushers. Currently the boxes for it are taking up all the utility room. Obviously there's not enough space in here to set the thing up. It's going to require a bit of space. So I'm going to clear the garage out, shift all the Astra parts from servicing it and stuff that I've just dumped in the middle of the floor instead of binning, and drag it out there, start to get it set up. Would set it up on the drive, but it's raining a little bit and I don't want to get soggy or have to move the car, so it's just pure laziness really.
And with that, it's time for a 30 times speed garage cleaning time lapse. I didn't record the whole hour of cleaning because that would be dull as bricks, but I feel like this gives a bit of context as to how much space is needed to set these up inside a shed.
Right, I finally cleared enough space to get these in the garage. Finally got my utility room back, so I'm going to start unboxing stuff and get it set up, I guess.
Inside the small box, you get the hydraulic lines, plastic blocks that go between your factory jacking points and the QuickJack, a brown box full of hydraulic fittings, and the hydraulic pump itself. I got the 12-volt version, which is the only one you can get from Costco in the UK. This is great because it can be powered by a car battery, so you could take it to the track and use it in the paddock where you might not have mains power available. However, if you're only going to use it at home, it can be a bit of a pain needing a second car available to run the pump, or powering it off the car you're lifting and potentially dragging the pump along the floor as it rises up. For most people, it's probably best to get the mains-powered version for home garage use, but you'd have to buy it direct from QuickJack or another dealer. Inside the long boxes are the QuickJack frames themselves. These weigh a lot and are awkward to pull out of the boxes, but once they're out there's two little wheels on one end to make them easier to move around. Now everything is out of the box, it's time to get the QuickJack set up. First, the metal plugs on the hydraulic cylinders are removed with a hex key and replaced with 90-degree threaded fittings. These are the only fittings in the kit that we won't be using the included thread sealer liquid on, according to the instructions. The torque specs for all of the fittings are in the included instructions. In my case, I don't have any crowfoot spanners for my torque wrench, so I did my best guess at what felt like the specified torque. I do recommend using a torque wrench though, as I ended up with a single leak out of the 12 threads or however many there were, which is probably from pinching an O-ring by over-tightening it. Easily avoidable by buying the right tools. Now we can attach our first hydraulic line. The other end of this receives a healthy amount of thread sealer, and a female threaded male quick disconnect is threaded on and tightened up. These short hydraulic lines stay attached to the jack frames at all times and can be routed under the yellow sticker or between the wheels where they're safe from pinching while the jack is in use. Next, I'm removing the plastic caps from the hydraulic pump and attaching the two male threaded male quick disconnects. Once again, using thread sealer to ensure there are no leaks without needing to tighten too hard. This is where I made the daft mistake of screwing the top one in first, meaning I couldn't get a wrench over the bottom fitting. Thankfully, I have a set of plumber's box wrenches for doing spark plugs, and occasionally plumbing if I'm so misfortunate, which let me tighten the bottom fitting without having to unscrew the top one and redo the thread sealer.
There we go. Okay.
The last step before taking everything outside is to pump up the system with air to just under 50 psi. These cylinders help to push hydraulic fluid back into the reservoir in the pump when lowering the QuickJack. Off camera, I've made up the two longer lines which use the 4 female threaded female quick disconnects, 2 on each line. I didn't record this part because I'm sure there's only so much screwing you'd want to watch. Wait, that came out wrong. Anyway, here I'm filling the reservoir on the pump with about 2 litres of hydraulic fluid. There's a lot of different fluids that you can use for these according to the manufacturer, and I went with Dexron 3 automatic transmission fluid, which is £35 for 5 litres from Halfords, and way easier to get than large amounts of proper hydraulic fluid. This way I have plenty spare to top up after the bleeding process and whenever I get a leak. With the hydraulics hooked up and jumper cables connected to the VXR for power, we can bleed the system. The frames are propped up at an angle on the large plastic jacking blocks that came with the QuickJack, so the bleed screws are at the highest point in the system. Make sure the pump and lines are also below the bleed screws, as I've seen people on forums struggling with the bleeding process for that reason. Bleeding is pretty simple. First, prime the system by cycling it up 8 inches to the first safety catch, then all the way back down 3 times. You know, the air tanks?
Yeah.
They push fluid back through here into the pump.
Is it okay that they're like uneven?
Yeah, they do that when there's nothing on them. With that done, you can open the bleed screws until air stops coming out and hydraulic fluid starts coming out. Then close them again. Next, press up for a couple of seconds, open the bleed screws till fluid comes out again, close them, then do that one more time. For me, air stopped coming out after the first bleed.
That was quick.
After a quick Costa break, we shifted the cars around and gave the QuickJack its maiden voyage on the Mini, which is getting a set of front discs and pads in the next video. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the next one, consider liking the video, and maybe even do a subscribe for more hot hatch content. The included plastic blocks go between the frames and the factory jacking points. This stops the QuickJack touching anything non-structural that isn't intended for lifting the car. With everything lined up, I can hold the up button and watch the magic happen. When full height is reached, you can lower the car back down a little bit so it rests on the safety bars with no pressure in the hydraulics.
So look, these things rolled in all late. That's fine, it's not coming off it, is it?
There was a bit more movement than I'd like this time around, but that's no fault of the QuickJack. My driveway is wonky, so only the front 2/3 of one of the frames was touching the floor once the car was in the air. If we were actually going under the car, rather than doing a brake change from the side, I definitely want to try again on a flatter spot of the driveway for safety. When it's time to lower the car, you lift it an inch or so first, move the safety bars out of the way, ensuring they're tight enough that neither of them catch on the way down, which could cause the vehicle to tip off the frames, and then you're good to lower. That's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching.